Good morning and welcome to this online panel discussion this morning on why employability matters to improving the health outcomes of people living in Scotland. I'm Pamela Smith and I'm Head of Economy, Poverty Environment at Public Health Scotland. I've been in this post for about a year now. Well, it will be a year next week. And prior to that, I worked for 34 years in local government, most of that time in and around employability from an economic development perspective. I will be your host for the session today, and this event is being held by Public Health Scotland. We have worked in collaboration with our colleagues who work nationally and locally on employability and health to bring this panel discussion session together. And a big thank you to all of you for joining us today and to spend some time focusing on what is a very important theme on why employability and health matters. There is strong evidence, as you will know, showing that good, fair work is good for physical and mental health and well-being. Worklessness is equally associated with poorer physical and mental health and poorer well-being. And it's also linked to increased risk of mortality and morbidity. We know that a lack of income is a key driver of inequality, and people who experience inequalities have shorter life expectancy and they also have a less healthy life years as a result. Work for most people is the main route by which they can gain an income and can lift themselves out of poverty and start to tackle some of the inequality and disadvantage that they experience. Good work is having a safe and secure job, good working hours, good conditions, good pay, supportive management, and opportunities for training and development. The Scottish Government's Fair Work criteria provides a lot more details on the expectations around good and fair work. There is clear evidence that good work improves health and well-being across people's lives and protects against social and economic exclusion. The quality of employment directly and indirectly impacts on individuals, on their families, on their children's life chances, and on communities. Therefore, work and health-related worklessness are important to public health and are a public health issue both at a local and a national level. Employability, colleagues, as you know, is defined as helping people progress towards, to enter, to sustain, and progress in employment. Therefore, the aim of today's panel is to raise awareness of why employability matters to health and to hear about some approaches to achieve a more inclusive and diverse set of employment practices. Through our panel discussions, our panel members will highlight current evidence to support the direct link between employment and health and how to overcome barriers to exclusion from employment and how health outcomes have been improved as a result. Our panel members will share their wealth of experience to help you to gain a deeper understanding of examples of what inclusive employment means in practice, or an inclusive approach to employment means in practice, and what needs to be considered in providing employment opportunities to improve and protect health of individuals and their families who are currently disadvantaged within the labour market. The panel will share with us their views and experience of how health and employability sectors are working together at a national level and at a local level to ensure that they provide the opportunities that individuals need and that they get right support at the right time, and also for us to start exploring where there's room for improvement. As you listen to the discussions, I would invite you to submit any questions via the Q&A function, and then we have some colleagues behind the scenes who will be able to take those questions and present them so we can issue some to the panel members. Lastly, the panel discussion will be recorded and will be made available after the session so that you can share this with others. Let me then introduce the panel for today, all of whom I've had the pleasure of working with directly over a number of years. Amy Stewart, who is Head of Employability and Employability Policy at Scottish Government. Amy has worked for Scottish Government for over 15 years, the majority of which time has been spent in the employability and skills policy space. Amy has been involved in developing and improving a variety of approaches and supporting interventions, including Fair Start Scotland, the Employability Fund. She has a current role in leading the transformation of the employability system through No One Left Behind and overseeing key commitments like the parental employment part of Best Start Bright Futures in terms of tackling child poverty. Amy is committed to ensuring that employability plays a key role in tackling poverty, promoting inclusion and social justice, and creating a fair and prosperous Scotland. And we'll hear more from Amy in a couple of minutes. Our next panel member is Sarah McCulley, Service Manager at Falkirk Council, and Sarah has led a multidisciplinary team in the delivery of a variety of employability support programmes, such as No One Left Behind, Young Persons Guarantee, the only public sector Fair Start Scotland provider, delivered Project Search, parental employment support, and modern apprenticeship programmes, and more recently engaged in the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. Prior to her current role, Sarah had worked at the front line within employability services for almost 10 years, and over the past 5 years has been working in collaboration with NHS Forth Valley to deliver more of a health perspective on the health and work part of Fair Start Scotland. Sarah also chairs the local employability partnership and works collaboratively with a number of stakeholders and partners, again aligned to the Child Poverty Action Plan, Disability Employment Action Plan. And then last but by no means least, we will have Lorraine Scott, who's an HR business partner and works in NHS Lanarkshire. And Lorraine has experience of working for over 14 years as an HR professional within the Workforce Directorate. Lorraine has worked at a local, regional and national level, which has given her a broad insight to employability and work. And again, she has been involved in a range of various initiatives around employability, including Project Search, Kickstart, apprenticeships, and the NHS Parental Employment Demonstrator Project. Lorraine's passionate about employability and about creating opportunities for individuals who may otherwise struggle to get into the labour market. And all of her work has been about reducing inequalities. So that's all for me for the moment. I'm now going to move to the panel members directly, and I'm going to invite them to, in a couple of minutes, say why they think employability and health matter before we then move on to some probing questions. So I'm going to go to Amy Stewart firstly. Amy, do you want to say a few words?
Sure. So thanks, Pamela, and thank you for inviting me along today. Good morning, everyone. So Pamela's introduced me. I'm Amy Stewart. I'm the Head of Employability Policy at the Scottish Government. My background is actually in forensic chemistry, believe it or not, but a career in the public sector always appealed to me. I joined the civil service whilst I was still a student, working in the Passport Office, then HMRC, and then sometime after graduation found myself working within the Scottish Court Service. So whilst I enjoyed all of these posts to an extent, they were quite transactional, and if I'm honest, they didn't really leave me feeling like I was making the difference that I expected when I chose a public sector career. So I was really excited to move to my first post in Scottish Government in 2007, and they've not been able to get rid of me since. So I've had the privilege of working in a number of areas of Scottish Government, from business development, key sector skills, and some time in research and development. But the area that I've enjoyed the most, that I've got the most from, and that I've worked in for by far the longest and still feel excited about the possibilities within, is employability. So I don't see my role in leading the employability policy unit as just a job. It's something I care about really deeply. Since employability services were first evolved to Scotland in 2017, they've been a key lever in driving forward ambitions for a fairer Scotland, and I'm really proud to have been a part of that. The agenda that I'm most passionate about is tackling inequalities, and I believe that employability and health can play a huge role in this area by working together effectively. I'm really glad to be here today. Like I say, the join up between employability and health is close to my heart. I grew up with a disabled parent, and I suppose that having witnessed some of the barriers that they faced across the years, it's something that I really am keen to make a difference in. So I'm looking forward to what I'm sure will be a really lively and constructive discussion today. Without further ado, Pamela, I'll hand back to you.
Okay, thank you, Amy, and I'm looking forward to hearing a bit more from you later. But on to our next panel member, Sarah, can I ask you to say a few words?
Certainly, Pamela. Good morning, everybody. As Pamela suggested, we all know that studies suggest that good work is good for you. And in the last 20 years, I've certainly seen evidence of this through the people that we have supported into employment at changing times in their lives. Examples would include those with long-term health conditions, disabilities, and carers whose health have become an issue for them while they've been focusing on the health of those that they care for. It's crucial, as Amy suggests, that we ensure that Reach continues to support those who would struggle to know where to go to engage in employability support and the labour market. All these examples have shown how the routine and support of a good employer can have significant impacts on health, well-being and opportunities. However, from a personal perspective, I don't think I really understood how much my own working life contributed to my health and well-being until at the age of 31 I was diagnosed with a bone cancer in my foot of all places. I was in a wheelchair for 3 months and subsequently had to stay off work for a period to recover. I can safely say that I was absolutely desperate to return to work. To me, I missed the mental stimulation, the sense of purpose, my identity, the interactions with other people that I'd previously taken for granted. To be honest, I possibly returned a little too soon from a physical point of view. However, mentally, I realised that work really did contribute to my mental health and so much more. So I suppose understanding this, perhaps on a smaller scale from a personal perspective, and from the visible difference and increased opportunities seen in the people I've worked with, I'm a strong believer that good work at the right time with the right support can significantly improve the overall health and well-being of the people that we're working with.
Thank you, Sarah. And I'm looking forward again to hearing a bit more about the experiences within the Falkirk area. But I want to move on now to Lorraine, and we're moving to another dimension in terms of the panel's experience. Lorraine, can you give us a short input?
Absolutely, thanks Pamela, and good morning everyone. So Lorraine Scott, currently working in NHS Lanarkshire. As Pamela said in the introduction, I've had the opportunity to work nationally and regionally, and I found that very enlightening, being able to get around all the different boards in Scotland and seeing what each were delivering in terms of employability agenda and apprenticeships for young people. I first got involved about 12 years ago, or 13 years ago, when we introduced Project Search to NHS Lanarkshire, being the first board in Scotland to do so. And this was really my first experience of employability programmes. It was quite an exciting time. The first cohort of individuals that we took through the programme, 100% of them managed to achieve employment outcomes, and I've seen significant changes in their lives. It's great to see things like them that struggled throughout their school career at the school times, and then we've got people being married, having babies, moving on, living independently. So that was showing you with the opportunity that they got there, and they were able to earn in a quality job, that they were able to go on with the rest of their lives. That not only changed their lives, it changed their families' lives as well. Parents were thinking, I'll never be able to get back to work, I'll have to look after my additional support need child sort of for the rest of my life. So it was really, really rewarding to see that. Prior to joining the NHS, I worked in the private sector for just over 20 years. So again, that gave me a lot of experience. I'm going to go back to meeting Tony Blair with a young person who'd come in through the New Deal, you know, who came from a chaotic background. And again, the company that I worked for at that time were supportive of getting people into jobs. So we know this agenda has been with us for a long, long time. We know it makes significant differences to people's life, reduces inequalities, and, you know, as everyone has said today, improves their well-being. You know, they've got something to look forward to get into work every day, having time off at the weekends, sharing time with their families, etc. So, you know, I have had the privilege of being able to introduce different programmes to NHS Lanarkshire, and it's been great to see the support that we've had from the staff, you know, albeit against challenging times for the individuals. You still see the eagerness to be able to help other individuals enter the workforce and sustain good quality jobs. So looking forward to the discussion today, and hopefully can share more of my experience with you then.
Okay, and thank you, Lorraine. And who would have known that such a youthful looking panel had so many years experience between them? We have some questions we want to now put to the panel members, but again, I would encourage you, the audience, if you have any questions you wish to raise, to put them in the Q&A function, and hopefully we can then direct some of those to the panel members as well. So I'm going to firstly come to you, Amy, and I'm going to ask you in terms of your opinion around, you've seen from a national level the work that's going on. You are looking at a transformation of Scotland's employability support services. But what, in your opinion, do we need to put more focus and effort on, and why?
So I suppose thinking ahead to today's event, I was conscious that there's a number of different angles through which we can view the employability and health agenda. So we've heard this morning, and I absolutely agree, work, good and fair work, is generally good for our health. We can think of the role of the NHS in terms of not just as delivering services, but as an employer and acting as an anchor institution and providing employment opportunities for those that really struggle in the labour market. But to me, the area that I feel could have the most significant impact, and where I think we need to focus our efforts at both national and local level on, is the join up between health and employability services and simplifying the routes through which people can access the support that they need. So Pamela, I think you set out at the start, you know, what we mean by employability, and just by way of scene setting to make sure we're all on the same page. Employability, it covers the full range of actions and services that we put in place to support people towards into staying employment. And in Scotland, our devolved services are targeted at those at risk of long-term unemployment and unemployed disabled people. So essentially people who face barriers, often multiple barriers to accessing or staying within work. Some aspects of employability remain reserved to UK government, so that's the Job Centre Plus network and support for those closer to the labour market and newly unemployed. And I'm not highlighting that split as an indication that we have separate systems of support across the country. Part of the challenge here for myself and my counterparts in UK government is to ensure that there's a coherent offer across governments regardless of circumstances. It is a complex system, and we need to ensure that navigating this split doesn't pose the first hurdle when individuals are considering the range of support and offer to them and what best fits their needs. And that's only the employability bit before you start to bring in all of the other services that people need to access. Our focus right now in Scotland, we're already taking forward quite an ambitious programme of transformation at employability system level through No One Left Behind. No One Left Behind, born from the reality that even whilst unemployment is at low levels, there's still many who struggle to find and keep a job. And that's the people that are further from the labour market. For example, people with health conditions, disabilities, parents living in poverty, ethnic minorities, but the people at risk of being left behind. No One Left Behind is an approach rather than a programme. The distinction there, people may be more familiar with large contracted programmes like the Work Programme or our own Fair Start Scotland here in Scotland. And what we've learned through quite extensive consultation, evaluation and experience is that no matter how flexible you try and make these national contracted programmes, those delivering them are inevitably constrained to an extent by programme rules, fixed timeframes for support and quite rigid eligibility criteria. So No One Left Behind gives us the chance to move away from funding these large national programmes to a flexible pot of funding governed and spent locally. So crucially, a primary driver for this approach is that join up between services and embedding employability within a broader range of support, and that can include housing, justice, advice services, and of course health. Numerous benefits to this localised place-based model, so stronger links with local labour markets. For example, what is needed in Moray is not what will be needed in Glasgow, and the best people to take decisions for an area are those that live and work there. And that's why through No One Left Behind, we're looking to local employability partnerships in each area to take evidence-based decisions on the support to be put in place. Employability, complex system, and the funding that we put out through No One Left Behind is a fraction of what will exist in each local authority area. So local authorities will have discretionary funding, there's investment through Shared Prosperity Fund, and DWP are an important player here as well. So decisions taken at that local level allowing greater alignment between funding streams, a co-investment approach to ensure that we're all getting the biggest bang from our buck and the biggest impact for those that need support from our services. But for me, the real prize is this opportunity to better align multiple services around the individual. So we know, we all know here today that people's needs don't exist in silos, neither can our services, whether that be employability, health, housing, ones I've already mentioned. But the real challenge for myself and other policymakers, and where I believe that we need to focus, is on that service integration and alignment point. If someone is facing a crisis situation in their life, so potentially living in poverty, potentially housing issues, insecure tenancy, awaiting mental health support, moving into a job will likely be the last thing on their mind at that point. The services need to be connected around that individual to ensure that the person can access what they need to get them out of that crisis situation, but they can access that full package of support, and that will allow them, although the journey is long, to have a conversation at a point where work might become a feasible option for them, and we can start to deliver the employability support at that point. Employability is often the last piece in the jigsaw for people, so really important that we are working together to corral the services around the individual. This will take time. It needs us in employability to value progress towards work as an outcome, not just that end point of employment, and for us to make sure that we're funding the person's full journey. It also relies on the formation of trusted relationships between individuals and those supporting them. But to me, that's where we do need to invest the time and effort, because it's what I think will make the difference. So to wrap up, join up, connectivity between services. I think the local dimension of No One Left Behind, the role of local government within it, local employability partnerships, which does include statutory bodies such as DWP, colleges, SDS, and also representation from health boards, offers a real opportunity to jointly do things better for the people that we serve. Brevity is not my strong point, and I really care about this agenda and would quite happily talk about it all day, but I'll stop there and think the intention is to have a bit of a conversation.
Okay, thank you, Amy, for that. And I think before I move on to Lorraine, just to say that the effort and the focus, as you say, has to be on that local place-based approach. And we'll hear a bit about that from Lorraine and from Sarah. And I think it's critical, the better alignment and integration agenda. As we said, employability is not only about moving people towards and into work, it's about enabling them to sustain work. And those wraparound services are equally important to prevent people from falling out of work and becoming economically inactive. And we know from all the current news that there has been an increase in individuals who are falling out of work and becoming economically inactive due to long-term health conditions. So again, a clear link between health and work, and it is also about that retention and sustainability in work, as well as progression. And we'll hear a bit more from Lorraine around those inclusive employment practices. I'm going to pass over to Lorraine, who from NHS Lanarkshire, can give a bit of a spin from an anchor perspective, and you may well be unfamiliar with the term anchor, but it is around the community wealth building, around being that major institution in a locality in terms of the volume of employment you provide, the volume of services, and the volume of procurement, etc., and the opportunities for local employment that comes from being an anchor rooted within a locality. So I'm going to pass over to Lorraine, who'll talk a bit more about what inclusive employment practices might look like. Lorraine. Lorraine, you're on mute, I think.
Apologies. Thanks, Pamela. I'm going to share some examples today on what inclusive practice employment practice looks like in Lanarkshire in the context of employability programmes, because we did have a bit of a debate of what is inclusive employment practice. And this is to help improve the prospects of our local people, you know, as Pamela has alluded to. I'd just like to highlight as well, all of these programmes have been delivered in partnership. You know, it's been mentioned a couple of times today. It's absolutely crucial in succeeding in a lot of different things, but certainly around this agenda. So we've worked in partnership with our local councils, employability partners, and where appropriate, our local colleges. So in Lanarkshire, there's been two long-running programmes. The first one I'm going to talk about today is the Clinical Employability Programme. It's been running for almost 20 years since the Boots factory closure in Airdrie. So this is an intervention that was put in place to help the local population into work. And ever since then, we've provided around 80 opportunities to unemployed individuals per year to participate in the programme. 2 weeks spent at college, 2 weeks spent in training with NHS Lanarkshire around about basic life support, manual handling, etc. And then they spend 2 weeks on the hospital wards gaining some practical work experience. And this results on them joining the staff bank. There's no interview required for this. It's almost like a working interview, and they complete all the training, and that then allows them, as I said, to go into staff bank. You may think for some people, would it not be better putting them into like a permanent role? But having spoken to quite a few of these individuals, the flexibility is what they need. Quite a lot of people are caring, they've got young children or other responsibilities, and they much prefer the option of going on to staff bank. However, as the years go on, a lot of them then apply for permanent roles in the organisation, and that takes them into sustained employment. The second programme Pam was already mentioned today is Project Search. This has been running for 12 years in NHS Lanarkshire. It started off in University Hospital Wishaw, and then 2 years later we started programmes at the other 2 acute sites in Monklands in Airdrie and Hairmyres in East Kilbride. These programmes are aimed at individuals with additional support needs. And I've got to say, we've learned so much from the individuals themselves. They've brought some things to light for our own staff members who maybe never recognised that they might actually, have some additional support needs themselves, and they've been able to get help in that area too. So a lot of you are maybe familiar with this programme after completing placements over a 9-month period, and they've got an area of curriculum that the college delivers as well. It helps them to build up their confidence and skills and to be able to secure jobs within and out with the organisation. So we work closely with the job coaches and the lecturers to assist with access to vacancies. So this is a bit about inclusive employment practice. They do working interviews, and obviously for a lot of them they have gained employment. So the figures over the 12 years, there's been 64.5% secured employment, which is a great achievement for this type of programme, and I'm pleased to see it has been rolled out across many boards and councils in Scotland as well. So those are the 2 long-running programmes. Over the last year, through No One Left Behind, Young Person's Guarantee, etc., you'll be familiar with Kickstart. So we worked with our partners again who actually referred individuals from their caseload to this programme. They were given sort of secret codes to get through the job train system because they had to apply like everybody else does. But we knew then that they were coming from the employability programmes. And when we interviewed these individuals, we were basically just looking for their willingness to learn, really motivation to come in and take the opportunity of a new challenge. We did have 30 placements on offer, however, only 15 people took up that opportunity. It was aimed at under 25-year-olds, and they all had to be registered with the employability partner, and they then worked in NHS Lanarkshire for 6 months in a variety of roles. 8 out of the 15 individuals were successful in gaining employment. There was additional wraparound support given that included sessions with our health improvement team, recognising that employability is more than just finding a job. It's a combination of factors and processes that help a person progress towards work, finding work and remain in work and move on in the workplace too. So we were supporting these people into fair, sustainable jobs and central to deliver an inclusive, sustainable economy with inequalities in health and wellbeing at its core. The NHS Demonstrator programme was very, very similar in terms of process and how individuals were referred from employability providers. There was that secret code again. There was actually 51 paid placements on offer there, so that just showed you the staff in NHS Lanarkshire were really willing to support this. However, we know it's quite a challenge, and we know there's a lot of people unemployed, but in terms of people coming into employment, it's quite challenging as well. So we ended up recruiting 26 individuals into this programme, and it's just coming to an end at the end of March. They'll have been in post for 6 months. So far, 50% of them have secured jobs, but the one difference that we made here was we were very flexible in working hours, because this was targeted under the Child Poverty Action Plan to, to parents who were finding it difficult to get into the workplace. And there's some great examples about how individuals have been out of work for like 14 years and 7 years and never thought they'd ever enter the workplace again. And that it's made such a difference to their life, and now they're in sustained employment with NHS Lanarkshire, and hopefully quite a few, well, 3 of them that I'm aware of have actually went into promoted roles as well. So they just needed that bit of time. They needed the access to get in the first place, and they needed that bit of time to build their confidence and their skills again, coming back into the workplace. So being able to support these people, and I use the term supernumerary, so these were additional posts to the posts we already had in NHS Lanarkshire, has been a real key here. Rather than recruiting them into vacancies and people expect them to hit the ground running, these posts have all been supernumerary, and they've all been supported either by national or local government funds. We've also recruited a couple of individuals into the Employability Hub team. So in terms of infrastructure, they have supported our managers and the individuals to make the best out of this programme. You may ask the question, why have 100% of them not achieved posts? It is very, very challenging for individuals to come back into the workplace, and there's a variety of reasons. And we've got some really rich information round about parents, with a couple of examples. Somebody with 6 kids, very, very keen to work, but inevitably something was wrong with one of the kids each day, and they left the programme because they were too embarrassed to phone in all the time and not to come in. So I wonder what we can do through the Child Poverty Action Plan to support someone like this. So we'll certainly be sharing that with our local councils when they're looking at what we can do in the next year. But I've got to say, working really closely with your local employment partnership is a great way to get these types of initiatives off the ground. And it is all about internal negotiating with managers and staff as well to make the best out of these opportunities. And at the end of the day, change people's lives, which is the most rewarding part.
Okay, Lorraine, can I stop you there? I know you've got lots more to say, and there'll be an opportunity later. So I'm going to come back to the panel members once we've heard from Sarah and pick up on some of the questions that have been in the chat, and also some of the questions that your contribution has generated so far. But before we do that, can I come to you, Sarah? And what I'm keen to hear, Lorraine's mentioned the link with local employability partnerships. Amy has spoke about the needs-led, place-based approach and the need to tailor and align those services. Can you tell us a bit about how in Falkirk you are tailoring that local support around the individuals?
Yeah, thanks very much, Pamela. So I suppose I can take a kind of Falkirk perspective and some of the developments across some of the other local authority areas that we work closely with as well. I suppose most significantly, there has been some shifting of how we deliver services locally. We've always been keen that the Employment and Training Unit in Falkirk and wider employability partners shape services that meets the needs of individuals, and that we increase our reach through close working with partners in our local communities, particularly those services that are kind of specialist support services based in communities. Services have started shifting structures to move away from working in silos of provision that group people together with one characteristic into the same service. So if we take long-term health conditions, for example, previously it might have been the approach to find out about an individual's long-term health barriers and then group similar individuals together and deliver interventions that were believed to support this group of individuals. However, we realise that individuals are more than just their barriers to employment. There's so many other facets to an individual's lives, and therefore supporting individuals with individualised interventions that support their barriers is much more effective. So if we take the employability pipeline for an example, we all understand the importance of early intervention and to take robust assessment approach of the whole person. We assess any specialist support and interventions that an individual may require. So although somebody may have a health condition or a disability, there may be significant challenges around budget management, and we may ask our partners who deal in community advice services and income maximisation to provide some support and advice and guidance to individuals. So barriers aren't straightforward, they can be complex and intertwined, and that's why we need to have a good volume and variety of specialist partners that we can call on to support any of these challenges that individuals are experiencing. Interventions are no longer solely focused on the employability aspects of a person's journey. They're integrated with a wide range of supports. This can include personal development, health and well-being, in addition to advice and guidance. And this has to be available to individuals at any stage of their journey. So whether this is in the initial assessment stages or when somebody is progressing into employment, life changes behind the scenes at all different stages of an individual's journey, and we need to make sure we have interventions that are available to people at various stages. So some of the examples of what we've been doing at local level, as Pamela suggested in the introduction, we've been working with our local NHS Forth Valley partners to provide a condition management advice and guidance support service, particularly aligned to the Fair Start Scotland provision on offer, as this is the provision that attracts most individuals with health barriers. When individuals are engaged in this support, they can get advice and guidance from a mental health nurse, occupational therapy nurse, physiotherapist, speech therapist, a whole raft of individuals that can give advice and guidance on how that individual can manage their health condition in a better way with the prospect of moving into employment. We also have all our staff trained in the principles of supported employment, and individuals will deploy the supported employment principles on an individualised basis as well, because not all models are the best fit for every individual. So our staff are highly trained in utilising the principles and the model and applying it where appropriate. We also have the individual placement and support offer, which is IPS, delivered by our partners, Scottish Association for Mental Health. And this is to support individuals with long-term complex mental health issues to progress more quickly into the workplace and then be supported to overcome any of the challenges that arise in that environment aligned to the mental health condition that they're experiencing. Wrapping around all of that, we have a variety of mental health supports, both group work and one-to-one supports, counselling services. And we have our award-winning DFN Project Search internship programme that we run in partnership with Falkirk Council, NHS Forth Valley, Serco and Forth Valley College. However, we also continue through the employability journey to the point of contact with employers who are keen to support local people and give back to the local community. We can provide advice and guidance regarding access to work applications, which allow adjustments to be made to the workplace. And our staff work with employers to look at job carving and shaping jobs to ensure tasks are focused on what people can do well, better matching the skills and abilities of individuals. We negotiate working hours that provide a greater level of flexibility, and we can support both employers and participants through this transition on an ongoing basis through our in-work support commitment. Employers include private sector, public sector and third sector organisations. We also have a commitment to support ongoing opportunities for skills development and progression within the workplace to ensure individuals can improve their income and their career opportunities once they have gained secure employment. Employability support takes a place-based approach, and this means the local offer may differ slightly from area to area to meet local needs and also to align to wider opportunities of economic development, such as growth in city deals, green freeport deals, and cross-reaching local priority action plans such as the child poverty, community health and wealth building, community partnerships and council plans. However, the Fair Work agenda and the benefit of work for health remain a key area of focus for all local employability partnerships, and there will be a variety of provision in your local area.
Okay, thank you for that, Sarah. I think there's been a flurry of questions in the Q&A relating to some of the inputs, and obviously also in relation to employability and health in general. I'd like to come back to the panel on some of the input and just pick up some points of clarity. Firstly, Lorraine, when you were talking about the secret code, some colleagues have put in the chat how difficult some of the public sector recruitment processes and practices are. So I'm interested, firstly, just on kind of what the secret code was referring to, and then maybe coming to Sarah, just to look at how have you enabled individuals to fast track through the recruitment and selection processes in terms of guarantee interview schemes, etc. For example. So Lorraine, firstly, just a wee bit on the secret codes, just for clarity, and then over to Sarah, just in terms of how some of the cumbersome recruitment practices have been overcome in a local government perspective as well.
No problem, Pamela. I think well, obviously the majority of people who work in NHS will know that we use a national recruitment system called JobTrain, and unfortunately we have to use JobTrain. So that was why we can put a code into JobTrain to flag these individuals up to us. However, what we did do in advance, to your point of the cumbersome application process, for Kickstart with the EWP colleagues, we had a session with them and took them through how to apply and what the recruitment process looked like. And with employability partners for the NHS Demonstrator project, we also did the same. And what they did was they got potential applicants in together, and they did a session with them, and they demonstrated how to apply through the process. The reason we have to use a code is because when the posts are live in JobTrain, absolutely anybody can apply for them. So it was only the people with the code that we were going to shortlist, because these were the only people who were eligible to meet the criteria for these programmes. So that's why we needed to use the code. Hopefully that's answered your questions.
Nope, that's great, Lorraine. And similarly, Sarah, in terms of the recruitment practices and processes, how have you been able to tailor some of that in Falkirk?
Yeah, I suppose there's a variety of different ways that we've done that at local level. So you mentioned the kind of guaranteed interview process, Pamela, that you're familiar with yourself, where we have been able to secure interviews for individuals that have met the minimum criteria for any of those posts in the kind of public sector. But we've taken that a step further and taken and being able to access some of the interview questions prior to the interview for a number of our participants that maybe have a variety of different challenges with cognition. So we've had that in place so that we can do some preparatory work with individuals. Another thing we've been working with our HR colleagues to do through the My Job Scotland portal is, instead of going through the relatively cumbersome application process, we can now do a direct CV application to go forward for those kind of publicly available jobs, and that obviously speeds up the process and provides a level of support as well. And I suppose finally, some of the work that we have done both with our NHS colleagues and our local authority colleagues locally is, when there is a recruitment drive for a number of individuals, we've worked with our colleagues and provided resource and capacity around recruitment and undertaking some pre-employment programmes that then feed into these opportunities, which means we can speed up the recruitment process if we can provide some resource and capacity to cut through some of the kind of red tape that can get in the way, and make sure all the individuals on the programme meet those minimum requirements and just go forward for interview, finally aligning them to any modern apprenticeship opportunities that may be available to them.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to come back to both Lorraine and Sarah shortly around the kind of job carving and work coach in terms of the in-work support. But on in-work support, can I come to you, Amy? Firstly, we know that retaining people in work is a key issue, and we know that there's an increase in work poverty, and we know that a lot of the reasons individuals are falling out of work is due to mental health issues, perhaps precarious employment, etc. But one of the colleagues tuning in is asking the question around the funding for in-work support, because employability funding has primarily been about pre-employment support. Do you want to say a bit about the shift to sustaining people in work, as well as the work going on to move people closer to and into work?
Sure. Thanks, Pamela. So worth saying that whilst we have, the way that employability programmes are traditionally measured as being the number of bums on seats that come through them. That's not in line with the approach that we're taking here in terms of no one left behind at all. We're looking at the success of programmes quite differently, and it's all about the longer term impact. So absolutely focused on that sustained employment point, but also recognising that the funding has to follow that. So our funding is not solely focused on pre-employment, it's there to support the full journey into sustained employment. So absolutely expect that even when someone makes a transition into work, whether it be that they need a bit of extra support to stay there or have a significant change in circumstances that they need a bit more intensive support, we would still expect our employability key workers to be keeping in touch with them and their employer, because it's just as important that the employer has the support that they need to support the individual. So that is quite a kind of marked change from the way that we have done things in the past. I suppose the other thing to point out is that our approach is not about shoehorning people into jobs as quickly as possible. It's about supporting people to take the decisions at the pace that's right for them. So we would far rather support someone to move into a job that, you know, it fits around their circumstances, that will work around their family, than just to get them into the first opportunity. Our programmes in Scotland are entirely voluntary, so there's no threat of sanctions if you choose not to engage with and disengage, anything like that. So it really is empowering the individual to take the decisions that are best for them, and that ultimately leads to them, evidence shows that it does lead them to sustain opportunities more often.
Yeah, on that point, Amy, before I come back to Sarah and Lorraine, can I just ask you a supplementary that's come into the chat? And it's about the trade-off between offering that holistic individual support, which can be costly and can take a long time, against achieving the scale of change necessary to show an impact. And it's that kind of return on investment, the cost and the value equation.
Yeah, it comes back to that point on impact. So there's no point in putting thousands of people through a programme if it doesn't deliver the long-term impact that we want to see. And in terms of that impact, we have to look at it through a few different lenses. So absolutely, there's economic impact in terms of how this is contributing to overall economic growth as set out in the National Strategy for Economic Transformation. The fiscal elements in terms of tax returns, but actually a really important part is the social impact, and that's something that we're looking to further develop under No One Left Behind. At the end of the day, right now, in terms of budgets for employability in Scotland going into the new financial year, we see an increase in what's been made available for employability. So this is a priority, but it has to be about giving people the right support.
Okay, thank you, Amy. I'm going to come back to Lorraine and Sarah, and then I have a general question that I want to come to everyone on around third sector. But on the managing long-term health conditions or people with disabilities or having more flexible working, can you say a bit about how you have undertaken any job carving, condition management, and the role of some of the work coaches that you have within your services, and maybe come to you first, Lorraine, and then Sarah?
Yes, similar to what Sarah was speaking about, and it's another part of our services with Salus in terms of helping people with sort of condition management. So I am not fully familiar with everything that they do, but they certainly provide services to individuals who are trying to enter the workforce, and definitely to individuals in the workforce and making reasonable adjustments, etc. I noticed that was asked in the chat. We are obliged to make reasonable adjustments for individuals, and whilst the service can sustain that is always done. In terms of job carving, there hasn't been much job carving in the NHS, and I think that's a great opportunity sort of moving forward. If we look at the workforce supply and also the growth sectors in terms of the ageing population, etc., and Brexit obviously has had a big impact in terms of people available for work in every service. So I think we do need to be looking at how we can carve jobs up to give really good quality jobs to individuals like with additional support needs, or who can only work so many hours, etc. The challenge will be actually delivering the service, and to be honest, I wouldn't like to be the person doing the rotas, you know, from the acute hospital's point of view, in terms of delivering that 24-hour service. But I do think it is achievable in some instances that we could be looking at job carving. So not answering all your questions there, Pamela, but hopefully that's some information.
Yep, thank you, Sarah. And Sarah, when you came in your response, can you just maybe touch on a supplementary question as well, that is there any stigma attached to individuals who are coming through these programs who maybe need that bit of additional support?
So I'll come back to your supplementary just in one moment, Pamela, if you don't mind. We at Falkirk Council developed and deployed a small team of what we're calling employment support workers, and they were to sit alongside our front-facing staff to provide that additional resource capacity, time, and many of them came from a support work background, so that they had the additional skills required to put in place a variety of different kind of methods on how individuals could work better in different environments and work in a more supported way. Those individuals were trained in systematic instruction training, and that allowed those staff members to go into the work placements and places of employment with individuals and provide kind of coaching and mentoring, looking at the tasks that they had to undertake and potentially putting them into, as it suggests, a systematic way that helped some of the individuals we were working with work in a more effective and efficient way. We also work closely with their employers, and as Lorraine suggests, sometimes that's easier to do in the private sector where there's specific jobs that are being undertaken at specific points in the day that individuals are very skilled at undertaking, and that means that individual's focus for their role can be on a particular area or part of a job role, rather than the expectation being that they undertake every single element of a job description. So between our employment support workers and the employers, we negotiate potentially what is the best fit for those individuals. With regards to the stigma element, Pamela, everybody that comes into employability support has a very individualised plan, has a very individualised approach from our workers. So you wouldn't necessarily know that Joe Blogs over here was getting anything different than Jane Blogs over there. So it would really be down to those individual conversations that the participants may have between themselves, but certainly from a kind of practical point of view, we try to ensure that everybody's journey is individualised, different, tailored to them, and therefore it reduces that level of stigma that someone may experience if they were going into a particular group for a particular group of individuals.
Okay, thank you for that. Can I ask a question of all three of you now, in terms of what you see the role of the third sector in terms of collaborating either at a local level, at a regional level with health boards, or at a national level with Scottish Government? So where do you see third sector and in addition private training providers perhaps playing into this employability space that we're just talking about around health and work? And I'll come to you, Amy, first from a national level.
Sure. So in terms of, whilst we're moving or have moved to a place-based model through No One Left Behind, we're pretty clear that within that we want to continue to have a mixed economy of provision. So third sector and private sector providers still have a key role to play. They bring a vast range of experience and skills to the arena, and we definitely wouldn't want to take decisions that cause us to lose that at a national level. I think what's important is to make the clear distinction that we move to a place-based model. We have local government acting as a lead accountable body there on our behalf, but decisions are taken at partnership level around the support to be commissioned and delivered through the local employability partnerships. There's been commissioned and undertaken this year, in terms of no one left behind. Absolutely expect that to continue in future years. So see an ongoing role for both third and private sector there. Third sector in particular, in terms of some of the connectivity that they have within communities, really crucial in ensuring that we get the reach of our services right. And that's something that I think as we, especially through the child poverty work and making sure that every contact counts and looking to really kind of increase the scale of services, that'll be crucial as well. So a key role on an ongoing basis.
Thank you, Amy. And if I can move on to Sarah with the same question around the third sector and private sector training provider engagement.
Thanks, Pamela. Yeah, I suppose the third sector and wider kind of private sector play three roles for us and align in three different ways to our employability provision. In Falkirk, our model is that we deliver the end-to-end key working support journey of the individual. However, we rely very heavily on the specialisms of the third sector and private sector with regards to delivering the training provision and the personal development, health and wellbeing interventions and such like. And we utilise a local framework of third sector and private sector providers to support that journey. So that would be one area that we're very, very much aligned with third sector and private sectors with regards to delivery. However, we're working more closely with third sector partners at the front end of the journey to ensure that we're maximising reach to those individuals who are maybe not aware of employability support provision, and that is predominantly third sector community-based specialised support services. So that's a further role that we see there. And I suppose finally, the kind of third area that we have third sector and private sector interaction is through the local employability partnership. We have third sector interfaces in each of our local authority areas who represent the third sector, and they sit on all the local employability partnership groups, and therefore we're expecting them to represent the local third sector and bring a voice to the table and feed back to those individuals. And that third sector interaction reaches even further across some of the other priority working groups and priority action plans across our local area, where the third sector, either as organisations or representatives from the TSI, sit in each of those groups as well.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And Lorraine, maybe just a question in terms of health boards in relation to third sector in particular, because I know around Project Search and other initiatives there. Do you want to come in?
Absolutely. So very similar to what Sarah was saying. We rely on the connection between the local employability partnerships, and there are third sector and private sector representation on them. We recognise the level of expertise that is out there and all the different, stages of the pipeline where they'll be focusing in with different individuals and the sort of what they need to help them reach, the stage of where they come into employment. And that's the part where we sit. It's where we could actually get them into employment, into work experience, sort of sitting round about the pipeline 4. So we rely on the local employability partnership to be able to connect with all these different providers.
Thank you for that, Lorraine. And colleagues, I'm going to come back to Amy on some points that's been raised in the chat. Again, I don't know if it's been a misunderstanding in terms of Amy's input around the bums and seats reference. But Amy, can I give you an opportunity just to explain the context of that reference?
Yeah, so sure. I guess that I am not at all suggesting that the way that we fund or deliver employability services just now is in terms of measuring bums on seats. The point I'm making is that right now we need to focus on the impact. So it's not about the number of people that we get through the door. It's about the long-term impact, sustained job outcomes, whether it is the kind of progression point that we're monitoring. So to put that in a bit more context, one of the things that we are doing under No One Left Behind is developing a shared measurement framework. And that's to get us to the point where we have a kind of single coherent view of how employability services are performing, and by performing I mean the kind of impact that they're delivering. So we're looking at that through a different lens, thinking about the reach of services, measuring progression, looking at skills alignment, looking at value, and looking at experience of services. So a far more comprehensive view to measure that impact rather than focusing on just starts and hard job outcomes. So we're quite transparent in terms of the performance of our programmes in Scotland, publish the stats every quarter, which people will be able to access. So I hope that gives a little bit of clarity there. It really is around the distinction of it's not just about participation figures, it has to be about that impact.
Okay, thank you, Amy. And just on data and statistics, another question, Sarah, if I can come to you, it's around the child poverty and around the parental support. And the question was, are you able to distinguish the priority families, the different, the 6 priority families within the child poverty, and do you collect data on the individual priority families?
Yeah, so obviously as part of that robust assessment process, we are talking to families about their individual circumstances, and therefore we can then distinguish what group that they fall into with regards to those 6 priority areas. We as an employability service continue to provide services to those that don't necessarily fall into those 6 categories in our wider provision, but we can certainly distinguish those categories. And we report quite robustly on a quarterly basis to Scottish Government, and that information is contained within that data set, so we can very easily provide information at national level with regards to the numbers and the figures with reach to those 6 priority groups.
Okay, thank you. And probably a bit of a contentious question now that I'll throw out to all 3 of you. And given that we're moving from a national to a more localised, place-based approach, and Amy referred to local government as being the lead accountable body, the question is to what degree are the partnerships truly functional, and is there a power dynamic weighted towards local government, because that's the vehicle through which the funding is dispersed. Not to mention that local government is a tier of government in its own right and has its own resources as well. But I'll throw that out to you, Sarah, as a chair of the Local Employability Partnership, and then I'll come to Lorraine, who referred to how important those relationships are in terms of delivery of some of the programmes. So first to yourself, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Pamela. So the local employability partnerships in every local authority across Scotland have went through significant changes to their governance models and the way that they work moving forward. They've all undertaken a self-assessment and developed an improvement action plan, and then reassessed the impact of the action plan potentially a year down the line after doing their initial self-assessment to see what improvements have been put in place. Very much it was about firming up some of those terms of reference, the roles and responsibilities and the commitment round the table with regards to the local employability partnership, focusing things and making things more formal that were maybe a little greyer in the past for some areas, not all areas. What I would say is that any partnerships that work in this way can be a moving feast. I feel that the partnership in Falkirk came on leaps and bounds through going through this process, and we were in a really robust place. And then unfortunately we had quite a number of individuals that decided to retire, so that then adds a new dimension of new partners coming in, learning the ropes, understanding their roles and their responsibility and the commitment that's expected of them. So what I would say is I believe in the Falkirk area is a true partnership. The council do have to be the lead accountable authority when it comes to the finance and the procurement to make sure all legalities are met, and I think the partnership is happy that that's the case. But I would say that different areas may have developed at different speeds because of those external factors that may be out with their control, so just to bear that in mind.
Okay, thank you for that, Sarah. And coming to you, Lorraine, and I know health is quite a complex organisation when it comes to localities, and regional territorial health boards may cover a number of local employability partnerships. So the same question over to you in terms of that connectivity around the local employability partnerships from the Lanarkshire perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been absolutely crucial for me to understand, you know, what the local employability partnership was all about. And I just joined them at the end of October, well, it was October 21. It was like a baptism of fire, trying to understand how they operate. Thankfully, we only have 2 in Lanarkshire. I absolutely recognise other boards, for example, Glasgow have 5, and even trying to sort of work with Glasgow City Region to break that down in the West. All I can say is it's just as complex in the councils as what it is, you know, in terms of the NHS. And, you know, it is all about the local areas, what your people need, and that can differ depending on where you are in a small country like Scotland as well. So it's recognising that. I would like to see some changes. As a sort of massive employer in the area, there are great opportunities to get people into employment, and I'd almost like to see us change the structure with the local employability partnership and how this funding is actually then sort of shared out. I know that we go through like a bidding process, there's criteria, etc., but you know, the NHS doesn't bid into that at the moment. You know, it's just if there's big government projects on, like the demonstrator project or the Kickstart nationally, that we were able then to get funding. And we've talked already about job coaches, etc. And I know that all the employability partners provide job coaches, but what they don't provide is that support that Sarah mentioned as well, is actually sitting with our staff on teaching the people the role, taking the pressure off the managers that are on the front line to just get through the first couple of days or couple of weeks to then make this person able to contribute to the team quicker and easier. So I really would like to see some sort of change there, and I don't know how we actually make that happen in terms of how large organisations could actually contribute more to getting people into employment. And I see there's been some comments about people stepping away from benefits and things like that, and I think what we could do is provide like unpaid work experience just to let them see, you know, is this an area they'd like to come in and work in? But that takes infrastructure to arrange all that as well and support our managers and staff through that.
Yeah. Okay, Lorraine, and a lot of that may well start to come to the fore as we explore the role of NHS as anchors and that whole workforce development, employer development. But the life issue, I think, is one that will continue because it is pretty new in terms of that whole transformation agenda, which is why I'm going to come to Amy next, who had mentioned earlier around that co-investment approach. Scottish Government money is only one element of investment that will happen across localities. So, Amy, do you want to pick up just on the functionality of the LEPs and maybe a bit about that lead accountable body, Scottish Government investment?
Sure. So starting with the LEPs, first of all, really interesting to hear Sarah talk about Falkirk in particular and the way that it works, and even the conversation from Lorraine in terms of role of NHS as a large employer. These are all conversations that should be getting picked up at the LEP as well. So I suppose that 32 LEPs, there will be different states of maturity depending on, you know, how active they've been before we went down the No One Left Behind route. I think what's really important to stress though is that this move from national to local is not something that we're looking to do in a big bang effect. We've been taking forward No One Left Behind since 2019 on a phased basis. And the reason we take that approach is to make sure that we're making changes at a pace that the system can sustain. And we definitely will continue in that vein. The reason why we went down the route of local authorities as lead accountable body, not least because they are another sphere of government, is because we know that in each area, fine, there's the Scottish Government core investment for No One Left Behind, but that's dwarfed by the Shared Prosperity Fund and also local areas who put in their own discretionary funding for employability. To get the biggest impacts from that investment, you want to bring it together. It's how we strip out duplication, it's how we make sure that services are complementary, and it's how we make sure that there's not gaps because each partner thinks that someone else is delivering something. So for me, that co-investment piece is absolutely crucial. That's something that I think we will start to talk about more, probably in the next 12 to 18 months. But again, that's the next stage. It's why we have to do this on a phased basis. And I think most people would welcome us kind of streamlining and making sure that the way that we work is as slick and efficient as possible across different funding streams.
Amy, just on that, and whilst you're in the kind of hot seat, if I can just ask you another question around the Scottish Government alignment, because we spoke about wraparound services, and absolutely local government do fund and deliver a range of those wraparound services, money advice, housing, you know, social work, whatever. But from a health perspective, there's a lot of provision comes via Scottish Government directly. Do you want to talk a bit about that national alignment and integration agenda as well?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously Scottish Government a key partner in No One Left Behind, and we do have to look at where we can add benefit at the national level. So I think that what's apparent even from talking about employability today is how complex it is just within that field. But given that we have the full range of ministerial portfolios, commitments across House and Health, various other things, number of bills due to go through Parliament, we have to consider how we can influence that right from the start to make sure that when we are developing outcome agreements or whatever, that we are actually considering how we corral this full range of services. What we don't want to do is go down a route where we further clutter the landscape and start to reintroduce some of the complexity that we've had in the past. And by that complexity, what I mean is, if we had a programme that was targeted at parents, for example, it wouldn't recognise that parents could be disabled. So you might have a disabled programme over here, one's targeted by age range. So we have to make sure that all areas of government are on board with that, because different areas, different ministers will come with their own ideas, and we certainly know that will be the case where we are just now awaiting for an incoming new First Minister, Deputy First Minister and potential ministerial team. So we have a key role in kind of corralling the alignment at a national level.
Okay, thank you, Amy. And I now have a final question for each panel member to wrap up the Q&A. So if we can have a kind of short and succinct answer, the questions in 3 parts, of course. So you might want to note it down. So you guys have talked extensively about all the good work that's going on, all the good examples of health and work locally, either at a regional level or a local authority level. But what I'm keen to ask you now is, are we doing enough? What do we need to do more of? And for you as an individual in your current role, what one big thing would you look to change? And if I can come to Lorraine firstly around your perspective from NHS Lanarkshire.
Okay, so are we doing enough? I would say no. You know, I've given some long running examples of programmes that are running, but we still have 11,500 people unemployed in across Lanarkshire at the moment. So that tells me there's more people who could be entering the job market. So I think we need to do more. I think we need to do more looking at the job carving, and I've already touched on that. But also, you know, providing sort of infrastructures where we can work more better together and understanding each other's landscapes. The team that we've just managed to get in place over the last 6 months have been out visiting employability partners, so they're starting to understand a lot more what they deliver, what we can do for individuals, etc. So I think we need to be doing a lot more of that moving forward. I think the one big thing that I would look to change, and you know I talk about it all the time, but it is about, you know, seeing NHS as a big employer, as the councillor as well, but how can we maybe put like a business plan in place to deliver over a period of time? Because again, nobody's mentioned this today, but in terms of any providers it might be on, you know, we're still waiting to hear what money we're going to get in April, not to decide what can be delivered in the next 12 months. So that would be really, really helpful in terms of being able to plan and plan effectively more for people and continue services. So I'd like to see a change in that.
Yep. Thank you, Lorraine. We'll just put that multi-annual budgeting out there because I think that's a war cry from everyone. So same questions to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Pamela. I think I agree with Lorraine. No, we're not doing enough. Probably looking at it from the kind of health-related benefit side of things, that potentially the unemployment figures don't look as bad as they did post-pandemic, but certainly there are more individuals on health-related benefits and sitting in that that sphere. Are we reaching them? To an extent. Could we be doing more for them? Certainly we could. And I think I'd seen some comments in the chat about how could clinicians and other health professionals support with sharing this message, and certainly that is something I would be keen to do. It's all about expanding that reach. There's a lot of individuals that have never had to be involved in employability support from welfare to work or from local kind of community-based employability support perspective. They don't even know where to start. So I think we have great established partnerships, but we need to do more with regards to those partnerships, and certainly the work around the anchor organisations leading by example as employers certainly would allow us to do more work with employers with regards to those flexible and fair and sustainable opportunities for individuals as well.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And Amy, the same questions to yourself.
Sure. I'm probably not going to say anything too dissimilar. I think there's always going to be more to do. So definitely, you know, on that basis, we have to accept that we're not doing enough. Looking at inactivity, looking at child poverty rates, far more that we have to be doing in this space. I think in terms of, you know, what do we need to do? What do we need to do more of? Twofold for me. I think we have to be talking to users of services a lot more, and I don't just mean individuals in terms of who will be accessing the services, but starting to think of employers as users of employability services, and taking that real Scottish approach to service design, which people may be familiar with, can share stuff afterwards if it's helpful, but really ensuring that we're designing services with people, not for them, and actually, if something's not working, it's not necessarily the user that has to change. It's an indication that there's something in the system not quite right. We jointly need to be putting our shoulder to the wheel to improve that. I think the other thing that I'd like to see a lot more of is partnership working. So it comes back to that silos point. I think we've taken gauge strides and starting to join up more, but again, there's always more to do there. So lots more partnership working around key people around the table and thinking about how we bring services together.
Okay, thank you, Amy, and thank you to Lorraine and Sarah also for answering that. So this morning's discussion has been really wide-ranging and important for us all to start some of those discussions around health and work, and I'm sure we're going to continue that beyond this morning's session. However, we are now heading towards the end of the allotted time, and I want to start drawing today's session to a close. You will see our poll appear on the screen, which we started the session with, and again, we are keen that you revisit that poll. But I'd like to just recap in terms of closing today's session. So whilst you're voting, I would like to summarise some of the key takeaway points for me. I think there is definitely a need, and there is already a move to much closer working between health and employability. And it's more important than ever that we continue to forge those partnership links. And we've heard a bit about that today in terms of where we can maybe look to strengthen some of that at a national and at a local level. We know that we need to close the widening gap on inequalities, and through helping people with long-term health conditions, disabilities, and those who experience mental health issues, we can certainly help to close that inequality gap through health and work. And it will take all of us to work in strengthened partnerships. I don't think there's any doubt that good work is essential for good health, and it's also essential for a good economy and vice versa. And I think you've heard from our panel today how up for that partnership working each of those individuals are, but the organisations that they represent as well. I'm hoping that this is the first in what is a number of joint events so that we can really get in and deep dive around that better alignment and integration agenda, and that we can put our shoulders to the wheel to put more targeted effort at a national and local level where it matters and where it will make a difference. I have to give a big thank you to the panel members today who have participated fully and frankly, as I would have expected, having known the panel members, and helped to inform the discussion today. I also have to thank my colleagues in Public Health Scotland and NSS who have done all the technical and planning arrangements for today. But I think the biggest thank you has to go to all of you who have joined, who have listened, who have put in your questions to the panel. We would really welcome your feedback, and there are evaluation forums being sent within the chat as well. We would welcome any comments on areas that you would like to deep dive into. So do complete the evaluation link, which is posted in the chat, and we can then have a look at that post a session. This will also help us in our ongoing planning and discussion with colleagues, both in an employability perspective, but also from a health perspective, public health, clinical health, primary health care, NHS, territorial boards, because we all want to be pointing in the one direction. And we need to know how we can continue to have meaningful and purposeful conversations as we move forward to make a difference. We will make available a copy of today's recording, and that will enable you to go back and go through that at your leisure. Hopefully you won't dissect it too much and even like appearing on the camera, and I for one probably won't be looking at it back. I'll just be taking all the evaluations and the comments and the questions. The panel members do have access to the questions that we haven't got around to answering, and again we will endeavour to look at how we pick some of them up post a session today. So I think there's not much left for me to do apart from thanks to the panel, and I hope it has been an informative and it has been a useful session for you to tune into. So thanks again, folks, and I'll now draw the session to a close. Thank you.